First of all, I would like to acknowledge that this is actually a historical day, or a historic day, and far from it being happening with due haste. In actual fact, it's been through a very lengthy process, the Citizens' Assembly and the All-Party Oireachtas Committee. I think wherein Deputy McGrath is entitled to his opinion, I don't believe that there would be he would ever see this as a right time. I come to this debate as somebody who was a member of the All-Party Oireachtas Committee on the 8th Amendment, and that was a 3 months intensive hearings where we heard what we heard were facts, actual facts, not rhetoric or personal beliefs, but actual facts writ large. Those facts were indisputable. The medical expertise from across the Irish healthcare system and indeed international medical community were at idem. The 8th Amendment endangers women. It ties the hands of medics. It ultimately puts lives in danger. It's unequivocal. It's no accident that the committee struggled to source medical experts that would take the view that the 8th was a good thing. The reality is that the vast majority of maternal professionals want and need the 8th Amendment repealed. I'm generally, I've got to say, happy with the wording and with the general scheme as has been outlined by the Minister. And I would like to commend the Minister for his work, Minister Simon Harris, for his work on this issue. It wasn't my experience in the 8th that formed on the committee that formed my position. Back in 1983, I strongly opposed the insertion of the 8th Amendment being included in the Constitution, believing that the Constitution is not the place and never should be the case to deal with an issue that is basically a healthcare issue. Since 1983, we've had to watch as countless women and families have been traumatised and victimised by the application of the 8th Amendment. We've been through the alphabet soup of women who have suffered and some who have died. And they are just the high-profile cases that doesn't necessarily capture the hundreds of thousands of women and medics, some who had faced fairly dicey decisions that could have gone either way. We know that the 8th Amendment gives an equal right to life to the unborn and the woman and the mother. But where there's a risk to health, we heard medics say to us, is that a 20% risk? Do we intervene when it's a 50% risk? Do we wait till it's an 80 or 90% risk? What parent would want that for their daughter? What sibling would want that for their sister? You know? What child would want their mother put in that kind of peril? Because that's exactly what is happening. That is what the 8th Amendment means. The big thing that stood out for me in the recent committee hearings and the surrounding debate was the issue of healthcare and specifically people's right to equal healthcare. And anyone who has had the misfortune to require a medical procedure will be familiar with the consent form you're asked to fill in, or your next of kin is asked to fill in. You see, that doesn't happen when you're pregnant. There is no consent when you're pregnant. The 8th Amendment precludes consent when you're pregnant. That is a very significant constraint on the medical profession. So put simply, there is no equal or no equality of healthcare in Ireland because of the 8th Amendment. Thankfully, Ireland has changed. It's a changed place since 1983. I think people realise that, you know, life is not black and white. There is a whole sequence of shades of grey in there, and we've seen that played out over the decades. We've come on in leaps and bounds in terms of our cultural attitudes, yet the existence of the 8th Amendment has ensured that the way in which we treat pregnant women has not progressed at all. Barbaric cases such as the woman whose dead body was essentially used as an incubator, while her family had to fight through the courts for the life support to be switched off. Her body was decomposing. I mean, what kind of country, people asked, are we when you see that kind of a scenario? We're a compassionate people. And that compassion will extend to maternal care and does extend to maternal care. So we need to trust our very well regulated legal profession, and ultimately we need to trust women, and we need to repeal the 8th Amendment. I believe this is a people's referendum. You can make changes to the Constitution that are often quite technical, about timelines for how long a Parliament might sit or whatever. But this is a people's referendum. And I think we're seeing evidence of people engaging. I certainly am seeing it in my constituency, and I've been engaging with it, and I have done some canvassing as well. I'll be voting for repeal, and I'll be encouraging others to do so as well. I urge people to get active, to have conversations around the topic, and put compassion to the forefront of everything that they do over the next weeks and months, as hopefully we get closer to providing equality of healthcare for women in Ireland. I think the committee was very clear as well about the ancillary recommendations, that the ancillary recommendations were not ancillary. They were central to the kind of healthcare system that we required. Comprehensive comprehensive and non-religious based sex education is required. Contraception must be freely available. This is what you do. Education and the provision of contraceptives is the kind of thing that will reduce the numbers. So they're not ancillary recommendations, and neither are the ancillary recommendations that there has to be an equality of maternal care. And that doesn't matter if you're in somewhere in the country, a distance from one of the teaching hospitals in terms of things like anomaly scans. There has got to be a quality and an equal healthcare system for women, and that was something I think the committee was very strong on. We want to see, and where that's not something that will necessarily find its way into legislation, it will be about resources. Those resources have got to be provided in a way that respects the fact that this is not just about repealing the 8th Amendment. It is a much wider, range of things that need to be done. The key issue here is we must repeal the 8th Amendment, and I will urge that, and I'll be out canvassing and campaigning to make sure that I do my piece and my party does our piece in trying to achieve that.